Sign it. Let's end this gracefully.
You built this empire on lies. I just rewrote the ending.
So this happened yesterday, and I'm still processing everything that went down. The moment I stepped into that courtroom, my ex-wife Sarah let out this condescending little chuckle under her breath. That nasal fake laugh she always used when pretending to understand things she clearly didn't, like cryptocurrency or basic human decency. You know the type, that Bitcoin is like monopoly money, right? Kind of laugh. The sound of pure ego in high heels. Her new husband, Kevin, literally shook his head at me like I was a parking ticket he couldn't afford to deal with, adjusting his too-tight suit like the room owed him extra oxygen. He gave me that smirk guys give when they think they've already won, the kind that makes you want to call security just to watch them get nervous and squirm. But then, something absolutely wild happened that nobody expected. The judge went completely pale, his hand actually trembling as he whispered with genuine reverence, "Good God, is that actually him?" Everyone in the packed courtroom turned to stare at me in confusion. Lawyers and press and Sarah's expensive PR team all looking bewildered because they had absolutely no clue who I really was or what I was about to unleash. Let me back up 7 years because this story doesn't start yesterday. It starts with the biggest mistake of my life. Marrying someone who viewed loyalty as a rental agreement. Back then, I was David Chen, the quiet, supportive husband in the background who handled all the complex numbers and spreadsheets, while Sarah handled what she pompously called the vision and the brand. I personally built the entire structural foundation for her business empire from absolute scratch, spent countless late nights fixing her half-baked proposals and strategy documents while she took all the credit on morning talk shows and at investor dinners. The same empire she somehow managed to claim as solely hers during our absolutely brutal divorce proceedings. She called it a clerical oversight during the settlement, like accidentally claiming ownership of the Taj Mahal because you happen to own a decorative potted plant in the general vicinity. She told me repeatedly I lacked ambition and drive, that I was too comfortable in my routines and habits, that I desperately needed to think bigger and dream harder if I wanted to be somebody. She said all this profound wisdom while packing her designer suitcases and taking our golden retriever Murphy with her, the dog I'd personally raised from a puppy and loved like family. She walked away with half my life savings, half my patience, and somehow managed to take all my self-respect too. It took me 3 solid years to rebuild both my finances and my dignity, just with significantly better furniture and a much clearer understanding of red flags and warning signs. The silence that followed her departure was louder than her ego on a good day. See, everyone thought I was there to beg, to play the sad ex-husband routine, the one who shows up disheveled and emotional, muttering about fairness while clutching old photo albums and tissues. Oh no, absolutely not today. I was there to educate and demonstrate. I walked in wearing a dark navy suit that screamed revenge, but make it tasteful, custom fit with clean lines and no tie because confidence doesn't need decoration or accessories. The bailiff even straightened up instinctively when I passed. The man probably thought I was a visiting senator or congressman. But here's the twist nobody saw coming, least of all Sarah and her discount Ken doll husband. 3 years after the divorce finalized, on a random depressing Tuesday with weather that made you question if God's thermostat got permanently stuck on meh, I got this mysterious envelope in my mailbox. Thick cream-colored paper, fancy wax seal like it came straight from an 18th century period drama, the whole aesthetic package. My mailman Rick yelled through the door like we were in a sitcom. "David, got something weird for you. No sender. Feels expensive though." That combination of expensive and weird only shows up for 2 specific reasons. Either you're getting sued or life's about to get extremely entertaining. Inside were legal documents and a certified will from the law office of George Hartman, Sarah's wealthy late uncle and my former mentor and guide. The man who taught me absolutely everything I knew about strategic business thinking, corporate structure, and how to survive intense board meetings with billionaires who permanently smell like cigar smoke and pure concentrated power. His letter was devastatingly short, but hit harder than any tax audit could. "David, if you're reading this, I'm gone, which means the truth can finally be set right. I've left everything to you, not Sarah, you. Because you earned it when she forgot what loyalty and integrity actually meant, George." I just sat there blinking at the papers spread across my kitchen table like an elaborate Monopoly board designed specifically for revenge. Her dream mansion with the imported marble counters, My name on the deed, the company's core patent that built her entire empire from nothing, my signature on the original filing documents, her precious white Tesla she constantly posted about on Instagram, technically company property that now fell under my legal jurisdiction and control. It was as if karma had gone shopping with my old wish list and delivered everything express shipping with a decorative bow on top. I sat there for 10 solid minutes just staring at it all, grinning like a man who discovered irony had both a sense of humor and excellent timing. You ever laugh so hard it turns into tears, then the tears turn into disbelief, and then the disbelief turns into, oh God, I desperately need a lawyer before I do something really stupid? That was me, sitting alone in my kitchen, laughing until my neighbor banged aggressively on the wall, yelling, "Bro, either share the joke or shut up." It was the first genuinely real laugh I'd had in years. "Harold, you magnificent old fox," I said out loud to nobody, staring at the papers spread across my table. I immediately called Marcus Rivera, my best friend and the lawyer who'd helped me survive the divorce paperwork without spontaneously combusting from pure rage and frustration. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy but tinged with curiosity. "Please tell me you're not calling to complain about your ex-wife's cooking show again." I grinned into the phone. "Better than that. Remember George Hartman?" There was a genuinely long pause. "The old man with the expensive cane and the personality of a classic Bond villain?" I laughed. "Yeah, exactly him. He left me everything. Everything. Another pause, then a low, impressed whistle. "Holy heck! Karma just sent you a care package with priority shipping and insurance." We met at his office the very next morning. Marcus's firm wasn't your typical sterile suit and briefcase corporate setup. It was more like a caffeine-powered war room with case files stacked taller than my self-restraint and a commercial coffee pot that looked like it had survived more trials than the actual clients ever did. He flipped through George's documents like an excited kid unwrapping Christmas presents, eyes getting progressively wider with each page. "Wow, this is absolutely airtight and bulletproof." He didn't just leave you assets. He left you serious legal leverage. Look at this specific clause here. The patent transfers are tied directly to your original investment shares, and they revert back to you automatically after his death if the company's current leadership is deemed fraudulent or illegitimate by any legal standard. He looked up, smirking wickedly. "And you can probably guess who the current leadership is." I grinned back. "Sarah and her discount Ken doll husband Kevin." He tapped the folder emphatically. "Exactly right. If we file this correctly and quickly, you'll own everything before they can even fake a new company logo or attempt a desperate rebrand. Now, if you've ever been betrayed on both emotional and financial fronts simultaneously, you know exactly how sweet it feels to suddenly have receipts." I'd spent years biting my tongue watching her parade around as some business icon giving interviews about female empowerment while actively stepping on the same guy who built her entire ladder from scratch. By Friday, we'd filed the claim, registered all the transfers, and sent polite professional notifications to every single relevant office and stakeholder. That's the lawyer speak, for we launched a legal nuclear tool wrapped in a pretty bow with a gift tag. The moment those papers went through the proper legal channels, her company's stock immediately froze. Her board of directors started panicking and calling emergency meetings. I sat on my couch with a cold beer watching it all unfold on the evening news like I'd just tuned into a season finale of a show I'd personally helped write and produce. The headlines scrolling across the bottom read, "Turner Holdings faces major legal dispute over patent ownership. Ex-husband may be key beneficiary." The comments section online was absolute pure gold. People were tagging her in posts like it was a competitive scavenger hunt for schadenfreude and poetic justice. Her PR team tried immediate damage control, calling it a misunderstanding and administrative error. Yeah, misunderstanding. That's exactly what I call stealing intellectual property, gaslighting a marriage, and still thinking you're untouchable. Around midnight, my phone buzzed ominously. Unknown number. But I already knew exactly who it was. I answered calmly. "David!" Sarah's voice came through tight and absolutely furious, that controlled anger she used when things weren't going according to her carefully laid plans. "You think this is funny?" I took a leisurely sip of my beer. "Funny? No, not quite. Hysterical? Absolutely. You should try genuine laughter sometime instead of that fake networking chuckle you do at charity galas." She went quiet for a moment, then hissed through her teeth. "You'll regret this, David. I promise you will." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it through the phone. "Already did my regrets. It was called marriage. 6 years of it. Then I hung up before she could respond. Sweetest silence I'd ever heard in my entire life. Click. End of call. But wait, because it gets so much better and more satisfying. A few days later, another package arrived from George's estate, this time containing a flash drive and a handwritten note that said, "David, if she ever laughs again, play this. You'll understand." I held that little USB drive like it was a grenade made of pure truth and justice. When Marcus and I plugged it into his laptop at George's dusty old office downtown, the place that still smelled like cigar smoke and old money, we heard George's voice, weak and raspy, but still sharp in that way only he could manage. "If you're hearing this, David, it means the vultures have finally finished circling." Then he coughed into the microphone and continued with determination. "Sarah and Kevin, yes, I know about him and his schemes, tried to force me to change my will through manipulation and coercion. Said it was for the good of the company and my legacy. They brought in some cheap lawyer, made me sign papers I couldn't read properly because of my failing eyesight, but I wasn't senile no matter what those snakes thought or said." Marcus's jaw was basically on the floor at this point. Then we heard shuffling papers, footsteps approaching, and a voice I recognized instantly, even though I desperately wished I didn't. Kevin. "Uncle George, it's not personal," he said with that fake charm dripping from every single word. "We just need your cooperation here. You wouldn't want Sarah to be upset with you or cause family problems." George chuckled bitterly in response. "Son, you couldn't scare a houseplant if you tried your hardest." Kevin's voice snapped back, suddenly aggressive and threatening. "Sign it, old man. Stop being difficult." Then Sarah's voice came through, cold and calculated in a way that made my blood freeze. "Just do it, Uncle. We'll take care of everything. He doesn't deserve any of it anyway." After a long, tense pause, George's strained but defiant voice. "You'll regret this, Sarah. Both of you will regret this deeply." End of recording. Marcus and I just sat there in complete stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. "That's direct evidence," he finally whispered. "HD quality sound, too. This is admissible." We made 5 backup copies immediately. 1 with Marcus, 1 with me, 1 in a bank vault, 1 on a secure encrypted drive, and 1 labeled specifically for court because subtlety at this point was completely overrated. But George had left 1 final message at the end that we almost missed on first listen. "David, when the time comes, don't just fight them. Teach them. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's demonstration. Show them what integrity actually looks like when the lights are on. Also, check the red folder in my bottom desk drawer. You'll need it for the final battle." That folder contained signed witness statements from multiple board members, notarized copies of his real legitimate will, and even actual photos of the fake signing session with timestamps and metadata. George had covered absolutely every single base, like a man who'd lived through way too many dysfunctional family dinners and learned valuable lessons from each one. The old man had believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Then I got another crucial witness, completely by chance. Mrs. Eleanor Park, George's longtime housekeeper of over 20 years who'd retired to Clearwater, Florida, where all retired legends apparently go to play bingo and terrorize seagulls. When Marcus tracked her down and mentioned I was handling George's estate, she said immediately, "Oh, I remember everything, dear. When can I testify? I've been waiting for this." I flew down to Florida on a Wednesday afternoon, stuck on a plane beside a guy who ate Funyuns like he was competing in an Olympic eating event. Mrs. Park lived in this cozy bungalow surrounded by ridiculous flamingo statues and more wind chimes than any residential neighborhood reasonably needed. She opened the door before I could knock twice, wearing a pastel housecoat and the kind of warm smile that says she's been waiting years to deliver this confession. "David Chen," she said, eyes bright behind her glasses. "I was wondering when you'd finally come. George told me if you ever showed up, I should put on fresh coffee. He said you desperately need it." She waved me inside to a place that smelled like cinnamon and pure nostalgia. Every single wall was lined with framed photos. George at charity galas, George shaking hands with senators, George standing proudly next to a 1998 Buick like it was a supermodel. Tucked among them were a few that made my chest physically tighten. George and me at his office years ago, back when I was still the eager young intern with a terrible haircut and genuinely good intentions. She poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from me at her kitchen table. "Now, what exactly do you need from an old woman who's seen way too much and bites her tongue way too little?" I pulled out the USB drive with George's voice recording. "You probably know what this is about." Her lips pursed knowingly. Oh, I know all about that terrible day. She made him sign those fake papers right there in his study while her new man stood behind him like some sort of nightclub bouncer trying to intimidate. George's hands were shaking so badly I genuinely thought he'd spill ink everywhere. I leaned forward intently. You were actually there in the room witnessing it? She nodded proudly. Front row seat to the whole ugly show. I told her directly it wasn't right. What they were doing to him. She just smiled at me with that cold smile rich people use when they think you're furniture, not a person. She said I should mind my business and stay out of it. So I did, meaning I memorized absolutely everything and waited for the right moment. She got up slowly, disappeared into the hallway, and came back carefully holding a thick, dusty photo album. George's 78th birthday, she explained, setting it down gently. The exact same day she brought those fraudulent papers. She claimed they were for a routine business merger, but George looked like someone was literally forcing him to sign away his beloved dog. She flipped through the pages methodically until she found the specific photo, grainy but clear enough to make my stomach twist into knots. George looked pale and weak, sitting at his massive mahogany desk. Sarah stood beside him, red manicured nails clutching an expensive gold pen with her initials on it, that practiced fake smile plastered firmly on her face. Behind her stood Kevin, in all his useless glory, watching like he personally owned the entire world. Mrs. Park tapped the photo with her finger. That's the exact moment. See her hand position? She's holding the paper directly over the real will George wrote just the week before. She switched them while he was distracted by signing. When I asked if she'd be willing to testify in court, she didn't even hesitate for a second. I'm 82 years old, son, but for that horrible woman, I'll wear heels and full makeup. She made George actually cry that day. I'll never forget watching that. Nobody makes a genuinely good man cry on my watch. Not while I'm still breathing. Absolute living legend. Before I left, she insisted on packing me homemade cookies for the road and made me promise to call if I needed reinforcement. I told her I might just hire her as my publicist. When I got back to the car, I sat there for a minute, holding the photo she gave me. George's tired eyes, Sarah's triumphant smirk, Kevin's smug expression. I could practically hear their arrogance through the picture. Then Sarah tried one final desperate move that showed just how panicked she was becoming. She texted me out of nowhere asking to meet at the lake house, our old romantic getaway spot, to end this quietly. That word did a full gymnastics routine in my brain. Sarah didn't do quiet. The woman could start drama in a library. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee when I showed him. She literally invited you to the scene of the crime? That's either incredibly stupid or a trap. I decided to go anyway, but armed with a small digital recorder hidden in my jacket pocket. The place looked like an expensive perfume commercial when I arrived at 9 p.m. Soft romantic lights glowing from every window, candles flickering inside, and enough roses scattered on the porch to make a funeral director jealous. Sarah opened the door wearing a designer dress and pearls, performing innocence like she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. Kevin stood by the stone fireplace in a suit that probably cost more than his actual self-respect, pouring himself whiskey. "David, you came," she said, smiling way too wide and fake. "Of course," I replied, walking in cautiously. "You said quietly. I had to see what kind of comedy show that would be." The air smelled like expensive champagne, designer perfume, and extremely bad intentions all mixed together. "Let's sit down," Sarah said, motioning to the candlelit table set for 3 with silverware and wine. I took my seat directly across from her, the candlelight flickering between us like it knew this was about to get incredibly awkward. "So," I said, leaning back casually, "how's married life? You two look legally entangled in every sense." Sarah exhaled through her nose, that fake calm tone already slipping. "We don't need to play games, David." "Good," I said, shrugging, "because I brought popcorn." Kevin glared daggers at me. "Cut the jokes, Chen." I smiled innocently. "Sorry, they're kind of my coping mechanism for dealing with people who steal things and commit fraud." Sarah forced a laugh, that same one she used in court, the one that sounded like guilt in audio form. "David, we both know this situation has gotten completely out of hand," she said in her rehearsed tone. "The lawyers, the press, the constant tension. It's bad for all of us involved. We can fix this together." I leaned forward. "You can't even fix a basic lie, Sarah. How exactly do you plan to fix a federal criminal offense?" Kevin slammed his glass down hard on the table. "You're not going to get away with this power trip forever, Chen." I smiled wider. "Buddy, you married my ex-wife. Power trips are literally part of the honeymoon package deal you signed up for. Sarah's eyes flashed with genuine anger. I'm trying to be reasonable here, David. I raised an eyebrow. Then why is your lawyer actively texting reporters and spinning stories? She froze completely. Kevin looked at her like she'd just confessed to major tax evasion, which honestly wouldn't surprise me at this point given everything else. David, she said, her tone shifting to that manipulative softness I used to stupidly fall for years ago. We can end this quietly and professionally. You sign the waiver Marcus sent over, agree not to pursue the company or assets, and we'll compensate you very generously, enough to retire comfortably. I tilted my head. Compensate me? You mean pay me off to pretend your fraud didn't happen? Her face tightened. It's not fraud. It's complicated business matters. I laughed genuinely. Yeah, so is surgery. But at least the surgeon doesn't steal your organs afterward and call it a misunderstanding. Kevin leaned forward aggressively, veins actually popping in his neck. Be a man, David. Take the deal like an adult. I smirked calmly. Define being a man. Because last I checked, I'm the one who still has a legitimate job and an actual functioning conscience. He stood up fast, fists clenched like he might actually try something physical. I didn't even flinch, just slowly twirled the expensive pen she'd placed beside the contract, spinning it between my fingers like a baton. Wow, I said casually, examining it. You even changed the font to Helvetica. Classy move. Very corporate. Sarah hissed through clenched teeth. Sign it and walk away, David. You'll still come out rich from this arrangement. I leaned forward, my tone staying calm but surgical in precision. Sarah, being rich isn't just about money in the bank. It's about peace of mind. You traded yours for Instagram followers and fake magazine covers. Her carefully maintained expression finally cracked. Kevin muttered something under his breath about ungrateful bastards and poured another stiff drink. I clicked the pen slowly, letting the sound echo in the heavy silence. My recorder, tucked safely in my jacket pocket, was picking up absolutely every single word they said. You really think people will believe you in court? She sneered desperately. You, the quiet ex-husband, the nobody. You'll be laughed right out of that courtroom. I smiled serenely. Maybe so, but the laughter definitely won't be mine this time around. She frowned, confused. What's that supposed to mean exactly? I stood up calmly and adjusted my jacket. You'll find out approximately 30 seconds after the judge presses play on the evidence recordings. Her face went pale as snow. You have nothing on us, David. Nothing real. I headed toward the door. Oh, I have everything I need, Sarah. And the best part, you personally gave me most of it over the years. As I reached for the door handle, Kevin called out desperately, You think this recording means anything legal? You'll never prove it was real or admissible. I turned back, grinning. Who said I only had one recording? Then I walked out into the cool night air. The next morning, Kevin actually called Marcus directly, trying to bribe him with $200,000 in cash to drop the entire case. He was stupid enough to leave it on voicemail, a full confession recorded digitally with timestamps. When Marcus called him back professionally, Kevin stammered nervously that it wasn't technically a bribe, but rather an incentive for discretion and cooperation. Marcus replied smoothly, Good to know because it's about to trend on Twitter and make national news, and hung up immediately. We sent everything directly to Dana Ellis, the assistant district attorney famous for making an oil company executive cry on live television during cross-examination. She reviewed everything thoroughly and filed formal charges for attempted bribery and obstruction of justice. Sarah went on, Good Morning Metro wearing soft pastel colors like an innocent fairy caught in a simple misunderstanding, sitting across from some host with perfectly symmetrical teeth. She told the overly sympathetic host, David became obsessed and unstable because he can't emotionally handle that I moved on with my life successfully. He's spreading misinformation to ruin my hard-earned reputation. I texted Marcus. She's on TV calling me bitter and obsessed again. He replied instantly, She's trending. #Sarahgate is officially a thing now. The internet loves watching karma work in real time. The day of the actual trial, the courthouse steps looked like a legitimate film premiere. Cameras everywhere, reporters with microphones shouting questions, people holding signs supporting both sides. One reporter even shouted desperately, Mr. Chen, did you bribe the prosecutor to get this far? I gave him my calmest grin and said, Nah, I'm just naturally good at making honest people like me. When I entered the courtroom wearing my charcoal suit with no tie, heads physically turned like I was a celebrity. Sarah was already seated at the plaintiff's table. Wearing white like irony was her absolute favorite color. Kevin sat behind her, looking like he'd accidentally bought a one-way ticket to Regretville and couldn't get a refund. Her lawyer, Pratt, stood up and started his dramatic, Oscar-worthy performance. Your Honor, the defense's entire case rests on fabricated materials created by sophisticated technology. My client has been vilified by the media, betrayed by former associates, and smeared by a bitter ex-husband who simply cannot accept her success and move forward. Dana stood up calmly, buttoning her jacket with precision. Your Honor, the evidence will clearly show that Mrs. Chen and her husband Kevin knowingly falsified legal documents, coerced a dying elderly man, and attempted to bribe counsel representing the rightful heir to George Hartman's estate. The courtroom actually gasped audibly. Then Dana played the recordings one by one for everyone to hear. First, Kevin's nervous voice. We just want to protect the family name and reputation. $200,000 should easily cover discretion. Every head turned towards Sarah and Kevin simultaneously. Then George's shaky but defiant voice filled the entire room. Sarah and Kevin forced me to change my will through coercion and manipulation, but I kept the real one hidden safely. David deserves it all. Everything. The courtroom went completely silent. That heavy silence where you can actually feel the air shift as everyone simultaneously realizes the villain isn't who they were told it was. Sarah shot to her feet, shouting, "That's fake! You can't prove that's real or authentic." The judge raised an eyebrow sternly. "Mrs. Chen, sit down immediately or I'll have you removed." She pointed a trembling finger directly at me accusingly. "He's manipulating everyone in this room. He's been obsessed with me for years." I tilted my head thoughtfully. Obsessed is a really strong word. I'd personally go with mildly entertained by your very public downfall. The courtroom actually chuckled at that. Even the judge smirked slightly before clearing his throat professionally. Next came the photos from Mrs. Park's personal album displayed on large screens. Sarah with her expensive pen in hand, George looking frail and tired beside her, Kevin lurking menacingly in the background. Dana narrated each image like she was giving a museum tour of corporate fraud and betrayal. Here we have the defendants actively staging a false signing while the witness, Mrs. Park, was present in the room and later threatened into silence through intimidation. Sarah slammed both hands on the table hard. "She's lying about everything, all of it." Dana smiled sweetly and professionally. "Then she must have lied to her recording device too, because she captured your phone call offering her medical assistance in exchange for cooperation and silence." When Mrs. Park finally took the witness stand, she was absolutely magnificent and commanding. Wearing her Sunday best, she identified everyone in the photos clearly and added memorably, "I remember Kevin specifically because he smelled like cheap cologne and bad credit. Really cheap cologne." The courtroom exploded with genuine laughter. Even the stenographer paused. Her testimony matched everything else perfectly. Every single detail aligned precisely. By the time she stepped down carefully, the jury wasn't just convinced of the truth. They were personally offended on my behalf. Dana's closing argument was simple but devastating. This isn't about a messy divorce. It's about calculated deception. About people who thought wealth made them completely untouchable, and one man who refused to let truth stay buried forever. The judge's words before sending the jury out for deliberation were heavy. If half of what we've seen today doesn't shock you, then you've stopped paying attention to justice. The verdict came back faster than anyone expected. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice, the trifecta of poetic justice. Sarah sat frozen, mascara running an Olympic marathon down her cheeks. Kevin just stared at the floor like maybe it would mercifully open up and swallow him whole. The judge looked directly at me and said, "Mr. Chen, your uncle would be extremely proud of you today and what you've accomplished. All assets restored, all patents reverted, the house mine again legally." As I walked out slowly, Sarah whispered desperately, "You won, David." I leaned close and said quietly, "No, we both did. You taught me exactly how." Then I left her there sitting in pearls, shame, and absolute silence. 1 year later, peace didn't come like a dramatic sunrise. It came like a refund. Quiet, satisfying, and way overdue after years of waiting. I'd opened the Chen Institute for Legal Integrity downtown, teaching people how not to become their own scandals and avoid my mistakes. When reporters asked if I did it all for revenge, I laughed genuinely. No. Revenge yells and screams. Justice hums quietly while sipping good coffee. The lake house is mine again. Sometimes I drive out there and sit by the dock with a cold beer, just listening to the quiet water. The same water that once echoed her laughter now mirrored peace instead of pretense. Do I forgive her? Maybe eventually. Do I miss her? Only when my Wi-Fi lags and I need something to blame. Kevin took a plea deal and community service. Sarah got probation and a lifetime subscription to regret. She tried starting another business under a new name. It didn't work out. Turns out the internet has a remarkably long memory for fraud. As for me, I'm doing better than fine. My mornings are quiet, my coffee stays hot, and my name finally means something good again in the business community. People greet me with respect instead of pity. Even the barista down the street writes Mr. Chen on my cup now. Sometimes when I'm locking up the office at night, I catch myself laughing softly. Not the bitter laugh I used to carry like armor, but a lighter one that says, "You made it out alive." Last week, I drove back one more time to the lake house. Same dock, same view, completely different man looking at it. I tossed a coin into the calm water, not for luck, but to remind myself I'd paid my dues and got real change back. As it sank slowly, I said, "That's for George." The wind was calm. The ripples faded gradually, and for the first time in 7 years, the silence didn't feel empty or lonely. It felt earned through patience. Sometimes life doesn't give you a fair ending, but every now and then, if you're patient, if you play it smart, if you let karma drive the car, it delivers a sequel better than you could have written yourself. And this one, it was just right.